The other question is, to buy a property under a company, does this in any way help to reduce inheritance tax buy-to-let properties? I get this a lot, but sometimes I'm probably not in the best position to answer that question. It's one of those scenarios where each individual situation probably needs a little bit more detail. But yes, essentially a limited company can help create greater flexibility. I mentioned earlier, they're not tax avoidance, and unfortunately trying to avoid paying tax is illegal, but there is ways to manage it and make it more efficient. And a limited company certainly helps with that. We touched upon it actually earlier on with the shareholding side of things, in terms of it's very easy to start transferring shares over. And one of the benefits of that is that you can start passing over some of the benefit or some of the shares of that particular company without giving up financial control of that asset and indeed some of the benefit of that asset. So you can slowly, progressively do it without giving up the control. Because I think what we've found is, particularly if you, in the case of parents and grandparents wanting to transfer over to a child, they don't always want to give them a 500,000, £1 million asset when they're 21 years old, because they don't trust them, very simply. And the nice thing is that owning it in a limited company means they could actually give away 99 shares, but then retain one share themselves, for example, and they would still then have an element of control over that asset, because importantly, when you set up in a limited company, nothing can actually be done unless you've got all shareholders' permission. So it just creates a bit more flexibility there. And what that enables is the transfer to exist earlier on in a lifetime, and therefore create greater flexibility and the potential to mitigate any potential costs. I see. And in terms of tax and stamp duty payable, you mentioned earlier it's the same as you're buying through a individual?
It is, providing the purpose of property, the purpose of the purchase is for investment reasons, then the stamp duty remains exactly the same as it would be in your own personal name. There is a common misconception that limited companies sometimes have a higher stamp duty threshold.
Yeah, because that is the case for Singapore.
Yes.
I mean, as a Singaporean, if anybody that is buying a Singapore property through a company structure, you actually pay a much higher stamp duty.
You do. And you also do in the UK, actually, if you use a limited company to purchase the property for your own name, in your own use. Okay. So if you're going to live in it and use a limited company, you would also pay a higher stamp duty tax as well. So I think that's probably the common misconceptions. It's sort of the Singapore scenario and the fact that there can be an increase in stamp duty for using a limited company. Okay. I mentioned earlier that our benefits and our services really only apply if you are an investor. So really anyone using GetGround, they will pay the same stamp duty as they would have done in their own personal name.
Yeah, I think especially in this part of the world, in Asia, most of our buyers, I always say 90% will still be investors. You have that 10% probably buying because they have kids studying there or they are migrating there for own use. But I would say a good 80 to 90% are still mainly investors, which will...
Yeah, we see very much the same sort of thing as well.
Okay.